This game started out oh so promising for the San Francisco Giants. 4 runs in the first inning, but a complete lack of an ability to hit in situational at bats, and Hayden Birdsong just having a really rough start sunk the Giants. So it calls into question, should they have traded Alex Cobb, and can they hit better in clutch situations?
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting this show for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. And coming up on today's show, this one hurt. It hurt initially, but then it was just like a bludgeoning when all was said and done by the Nationals against the Giants, which it didn't look like it was going to go that way when the Giants scored 4 runs in the first. But the pitching, Hayden Birdsong had a really rough one, and then the situational hitting, which is where I want to start, because I get into, I don't want to call them arguments, but like debates with people online, like when we were talking about the trade deadline, about is the Giants offense above average, is it below average, and then there's all kinds of ways you can look at that. And by like simple weighted runs created plus, they have been an above average offensive team, but that's context neutral. It says nothing about have they hit well in clutch situations? And the answer to that is a resounding no on the season, and it's been particularly acute as of late. So even just on the season, Fangraphs has, I don't know exactly what they define as high leverage, medium leverage, and low leverage, but you can sort by those situations. Just they have a clue what they're doing in making those categories. And in high leverage situations, the Giants are 23rd in weighted runs created plus at 85. So 100 is league average offense, and the median team here is at a 106 weighted runs created plus in high leverage situation. The Padres, by the way, leading baseball by an enormous margin with a 160 weighted runs created plus in high leverage situations, hitting 316, 398 on base, 520 slugging. So that just kind of goes to show you the variance that you can get in such a category. Giants are hitting 236 with a 308 on base and 347 slugging. There are some good teams below them. The Braves have been worse in high leverage situations. The Phillies have been worse. The Phillies have one of the best records in baseball, and they've been significantly worse than the Giants in high leverage situations. So that means A, that they've pitched better as a team probably, and B, that they've done better in medium and low leverage situations. But nonetheless, I mean, if I were to sort, I don't know exactly how far back we want to go here, but let's just say the month of August, because it has felt particularly acute as of late, and the Giants are dead last. They only have one plate appearance in what Fangraphs calls high leverage in the month of August. So that doesn't really make sense to me. That just kind of goes to show you, like situational hitting is not necessarily high leverage. So dead last, but one plate appearance. So that's irrelevant. But so I guess it's kind of more relevant to look at it on the season, because when we start getting into samples of a few games, it's just kind of like, it's just noise, and so I don't really think it matters. And ultimately, this is my argument, is that I think that these things are not stable. And actually, it's kind of funny because on Fangraphs, the lead story right now, as of this morning on August 7th, is how to argue about clutchness. And the little subtitle is past returns are not a guarantee of future performance. And so that's exactly kind of my argument. But I get it. Like, it directly correlates to wins and losses, but it just doesn't directly predict how you're going to do in the future. But for sure, if you're not clutch, it's going to cost you. There's no argument there. It's just that just because you've done well in those situations doesn't mean you will continue to do well, and vice versa. I mean, like, what the Padres are doing is insane. Anyway, the Giants in medium, let's just look at runners in scoring position, because I know this is a term that gets used a lot and people like to talk about it, and so I'll use it. With runners in scoring position, the Giants are third worst in terms of weighted runs created plus, hitting 235, 301 on base, 372 slugging. The median team is around a 110, 111 weighted runs created plus in these situations with runners in scoring position. So, it's above at, like, the league hits. If we just do like MLB and see what does MLB do with runners in scoring position, they hit 255, 333 on base, 418 slugging. MLB is about 8% better than its own league average offense. So generally teams hit better than normal with runners in scoring position, but the Giants hit significantly worse this year. And it's kind of just, is it, part of what it looks like right now is pressing, which is when you're trying too hard and you really want to get it done. And when the team is where it is, if you're like 20 games over 500, you're free and easy, and maybe it's a little easier to come through in these situations. But when you're like where the Giants are, which is like every game matters a lot and you really want to get the job done, it can cause you to come out of your normal behavior at the plate and start chasing pitches out of the zone, just being too aggressive, whatever the case may be. So a couple other things to look at here in regards to the hitting. We can look on Baseball Reference and see, with a runner on third and less than 2 outs, how often does that runner score? And for the league average is 51.2% of the time. So it is worth pointing out that about half the time teams fail to get that runner in. So it's not like an automatic run. Like, you shouldn't assume that guy's going to score a ton. He's going to score about half the time in that situation. And it also really largely depends too on, is the infield in or is the infield back. And that's part of what was so frustrating yesterday, is that the Nationals kept having this situation, runner on third, less than 2 outs, infield back. And they were like conceding the run, just hit a ground ball and you score a run. And the Giants, time and time again, were not able to score that run, which is just exceptionally frustrating, because they were only down by like 2-3 runs at the time. And they just couldn't, there were like 4 runs that they left out there just by not being able to hit a ground ball or a fly ball. They would strike out, they would pop out, or they would hit a line drive right at somebody. So that's some bad luck. But anyway, league average is 51.2% in scoring that run. And the Giants come in 8th worst at 49.1%. So it's really not that different than league average, 51.2% versus 49.1%. It's hardly noticeable. It seems noticeable, but it's really 2 percentage points. And there are also, again, good teams below the Giants. The Brewers have been worse. The Mets have been worse. The Mariners have been worse. All those teams are in pretty good position. And, some of them significantly worse than the Giants. And lastly, advancing a runner from second with nobody out. Runner in second, nobody out. League average advance rate there is 50.9%. So again, only about half the time are teams advancing that runner. And the Giants are the closest team to league average at 50.8. League average is 50.9. So they're able to get that guy over at an average rate. And at least they have that going for them. But you got to get the guy home. The whole point is you get the guy to third with less than 2 outs. You got to score him. And they've been below average at that, below average with runners in scoring position, below average in high leverage situations. And to me, it's largely random. And I haven't read that Fangraphs piece yet, but I'm guessing it's going to say much of the same, and the proof being that you can do well one year, you can do very well, and then you can do very poorly on a team basis and then on an individual basis. And so it doesn't really predict anything moving forward, but it is super frustrating to watch. So another thing that was frustrating to watch was Hayden Birdsong's outing and the rest of the pitching. Just a grind of a game on the pitching side. Should the Giants have traded Alex Cobb? It's a question worth asking after this Birdsong outing. We'll get into it in just a minute, and before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members, myself included. It's the most exciting and easiest way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you and me covered every week, from lowering select players' stat projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, which I've taken advantage of like every Tuesday, or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. Prize Picks is also available in more than 30 states across the country, including California. Just the other day, I hit on my Prize Picks lineup of Logan Webb, more than 3.5 strikeouts. He had 4, and more than 2.5 runs allowed for Patrick Corbin, and he allowed 4, more than 2.5, and he allowed 4. So that was, that was $30 to win 51, and that was a hit for me. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase by the way, on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, here we go. We're going to get into the question that bears, asking, should the Giants have traded Alex Cobb? Because suddenly you're leaning on these young pitchers like Hayden Birdsong, and if they have outings like we saw yesterday, it's like, hey, you might have liked to have that veteran where you know what you're going to get, and maybe have Birdsong as depth. It's a good question to ask at this point. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast. Host Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor to help you get ready for the MLB playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And a reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. So, the question that bears being asked is, should the Giants have traded Alex Cobb now that we saw this most recent outing from Hayden Birdsong, and which was obviously something that was possible given that he's unproven. And when I say unproven, I mean he had only made a handful of starts coming into this outing. He's 22 years old, and suddenly that ERA that was, I think, 2.97 coming into the game is 4.73 with an expected ERA of 4.27, fielding independent pitching of 5.02. So did they just misevaluate Birdsong? Is this just a blip? It's all worth asking. I mean, he completely labored through this outing. He threw 40 pitches in a second inning in which the Nationals scored 5 runs when the Giants had staked him to a 4-0 lead. I'm not trying to bury the guy, but this is just the facts of the outing. 2 innings pitched, 2+ innings. He went back out for the third and allowed a homer and a walk, and then that was it for him. 7 earned runs, 5 hits, 3 walks, 1 strikeout, 2 homers, and it was just a grind for everybody. Birdsong threw 66 pitches. Randy Rodriguez in 2 2/3 threw 56 pitches. I mean, the Giants threw so many pitches. It felt like this game dragged on forever. That just goes to show you how much the pitch clock has reduced game times, because the game was only 3 hours and 2 minutes, which is below what the average game was before the pitch clock. But it felt like it took forever. Anyway, to get off to a 4-0 lead, and then to just end up getting blown out. After that, the Giants got outscored 11-1. Nationals have done this to the Giants now 3 years in a row, where they've just been impossible to put away and have just racked up hits. They've had games like this against the Giants and in whole series like this even. So let's hope with Blake Snell a little bit of normalcy returns and the better team can assert itself here and win a game, with Blake Snell going against Jake Irvin, who's having a nice season with a 3.56 ERA and 134 innings. So it's not going to be easy, but anytime you have Blake Snell, you do have the advantage. And so Alex Cobb, if we look at like projections, Alex Cobb projected by Steamer to have an ERA of 3.60 for the rest of the season. Zips projecting an ERA of 3.84. ATC projecting an ERA of 3.79. And so I think like it hindsight is 2020, and there wasn't too much. What really stood out to me was when Logan Webb talked about them trading Alex Cobb, and he said that Cobb was like his best friend in the whole sport. And one thing that really stood out was the depth and how you don't have it so much once you trade Alex Cobb, who, by the way, still hasn't pitched. And so you would have had to probably use Hayden Birdsong anyway yesterday, or that would have been a bullpen game, And so maybe Birdsong, this is just a blip and he dominates the rest of the season, or at least is solid the rest of the season. We don't know. But Alex Cobb still hasn't debuted. He's likely to debut for the Guardians, the team he was traded to at the deadline this weekend. And so we'll see how Cobb performs. He's probably not going to be able to pitch. We'll see. I don't know how deep he's going to be able to pitch into games initially or overall. He's obviously had a lot of injuries going on. So we'll see. And Hayden Birdsong came into this outing just looking like a really good young pitcher, and one start shouldn't totally change an evaluation of a guy. But nonetheless, in my opinion, this prospect they got for Cobb better be someone that they really liked, because otherwise it's like there's really a strong case to make that Cobb plus then having Birdsong in the minors as insurance, because guys get banged up, and we're still talking about roughly 2 months of the season left. And Snell has had a couple of IL stints. Cobb is coming off surgeries and blisters and setbacks. So a known commodity, and you could have had Logan Webb, Blake Snell, Alex Cobb, Robbie Ray, and Kyle Harrison in your rotation with Hayden Birdsong. I honestly feel like I was even forgetting someone there. Hayden Birdsong as depth. And let me see, was I forgetting anyone? No, I don't think so. I guess Keaton Wynn, but he's out for the season. Tristan Beck coming back. I guess he could be an option if Birdsong falters. But anyway, Jordan Hicks was a rotation. I think that's the guy I was thinking. I was forgetting, but he's now out of the rotation. So anyway, it's certainly a question worth asking, and this game may come back to haunt them. Every game is really important, and when you get off to a 4-0 lead like that in the first inning, that is against the Nationals. Like when you're when you're kind of in must-win mode. I mean, we're not quite in must-win mode yet, but these games really matter. They know that these games really matter, and that was a tough one, and it had a lot to do with the situational hitting, but more so I think it had to do with the pitching, which has been what I've been saying all season long, that the pitching has been more of an issue. So yeah, the Giants' win probability after that 4-run first was about 85%. So that's not like crazy high. The Nationals still had 9 innings of their own to try to come back, and they very much did. But on the season, it's just worth pointing out, like, Giants rank 4th worst in wins above replacement by their pitchers, and Fangraphs wins above replacement, and they use fielding independent pitching for this metric, and I don't quite understand why the Giants are that low, because their fielding independent pitching is 11th best. And so that kind of doesn't make sense to me. The Giants' ERA, more importantly, is 22nd at 4.31, and their starting pitcher ERA is 20th at 4.35. So their relief pitcher ERA is 22nd at 4.26. And so the pitching, I continue to say it, like, it's easy to focus on the situational or lack thereof hitting, but the Giants ultimately scored 5 runs, and if you could go out there and allow 4 or fewer, you win the game. And yes, you talk about the situational hitting or lack thereof, but the fact is you allowed 11 runs, and your starter allowed 7 in 2 innings and 2+ innings. And so that is more of the issue in this particular game. But you've got Blake Snell going today, and like I said, hopefully things kind of normalize, and Snell coming off his no-hitter and just like 4 or 5 straight dominant outings can do that. The Nationals have just been tough on the Giants offensively, which is weird because, and we'll look at that, their overall hitting numbers are not great, but they've given the Giants fits the last 3 seasons in this exact kind of way, where they just like won't strike out, they put the ball in play, they find holes, and they put up big run totals, which they just don't do against the whole league in general on average, but they have done against the Giants with some consistency over the last few years. So anyway, we'll get into that, and we'll get into injury updates, including Wilmer Flores with a season-ending procedure on his knee. So we'll get into that, all of that, in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Liquid IV. Get hydrated with electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients from the #1 powdered hydration brand in America. Because baseball and summer go together like Liquid IV and indulgent hydration. The benefits are numerous. You can stay hydrated while traveling, going to summer festivals, or after a night out. Blast off with the iconic summer flavor of Popsicle Firecracker, a festive blend of citrus-fueled lemon, lime, tart cherry, and raspberry flavors. And you can find all your favorite flavors on their website, from acai berry and lemon lime to pina colada. Tear, pour, live more. 1 stick and 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. No more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. All right, here we go. We're going to get into this upcoming game, previewing it a little bit. I want to get into the Nationals offense because it's easy to look at these games and say that they're doing something that the Giants should be doing, but overall, that's just, the Giants have just been a much better offense than the Nationals. It's just been a weirdly tough matchup for the Giants in recent years. And then injury updates, including Wilmer Flores being out for the rest of the season, and how that, he does have this player option. We discussed it a little bit yesterday, but what does this mean for that? Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every dayers tomorrow, we will be discussing this game. I think, I've got a flight. Long story short, I do believe we're going to talk about, the game tomorrow is at 9:00 Pacific time. And so coming up tomorrow, we're going to be discussing both Blake Snell's start in game 3 of the series and then game 4 of the series being Kyle Harrison against Hertz. I don't even know this guy's first name. DJ Hertz, another left-handed pitcher, looks very young, born in 2001 out of, I thought Stanford, but no, Sanford High School. Anyway, we'll be breaking down 2 games tomorrow. So, so much to get into, but let me just briefly look at the Nationals hitting overall. So the Nationals are 25th in Fangraphs wins above replacement as an offense or as like a position player group, which includes hitting, base running, and defense. And the Nationals, like I said, 25th, Giants 11th. Giants have hit 244, Nationals have hit 243. Giants have a on-base percentage of 314, Nationals at 312. Giants slugging has been 399, Nationals at 376. So there's basically the average and on base are like almost identical. Giants have struck out like 2 percentage points more, but the Giants have hit for significantly more power, even though the Giants haven't hit for a ton of power. So the Nationals have just hit for very little power. I would imagine they're near the very bottom. 25th in slugging, and in ISO, third worst, 28th. CJ Abrams, by the way, my goodness, he hit the highest ball of the year for a home run. It was up near his head, and he hit kind of the big swing of the game. I think it was a 3-run homer against Birdsong, up literally at his chin level. Amazing swing. And Birdsong, we do have some comments, by the way, and we'll get to the Flores injury, but on the situational at-bats, I meant to read this in the beginning, but Bob Melvin said, our situational at-bats were terrible tonight. That's been a problem here for a couple of weeks now, and runners in scoring position. It's the cheapies that you can control, trying to get a ball in the air. You're just trying to get a run home. It doesn't take a hit to do it, and that's been frustrating. It sure has. And of Birdsong, Melvin said, we haven't seen that. There are times that he's been scattered with his fastball, but his off-speed stuff, he's been able to throw for strikes and keep batters off balance. Today, he just didn't have command of anything early on, and they were putting some good swings on them and putting a lot of pressure on them. And on the home run that Abrams hit, I just have to say, Birdsong said, I have no idea how he hit that ball. Good for him. Guy can hit. They can hit fastballs, and I learned that. I knew that going in, but not many people are hitting that ball. It was impressive. And of his outing, Birdsong says, obviously I wanted to get 5, 6, 7 innings, but sometimes it doesn't work that way. Things happen. Guys can hit. I didn't have my best stuff. It wasn't my day, but I've got to be a bit better than 2 innings. I've got to be. Can't hurt the bullpen like that, especially with a couple more games coming up this week. And Melvin said he's been good for us. So it's just about, don't worry about that when you've been good enough at times to where you're going to be out there again. We have confidence in you, and you have good stuff. So, yeah. Elliot Ramos, by the way, was speaking of injuries, with a thumb injury for the last week or so. It's been affecting him, but he went out there and hit a opposite field no doubter to right center in the first inning, and then Conforto hit a 3-run homer with 2 outs, a whole 2-out rally with a walk, 10-pitch walk by Chapman, a hit by pitch, and then a Conforto 3-run homer. Things were looking good, but it was all downhill from there. So speaking of injuries, Wilmer Flores is out for the season. Wilmer Flores out for the season after undergoing this 10X procedure on his right knee, where he has right knee tendonitis. And I said, I read the little description of this procedure, and that it said it may take up to 12 weeks for recovery to get back to strenuous activities or sports. And so that to me said he may be done for the season. And in fact, the Giants, Bob Melvin, said that he is. And so obviously, Flores hasn't performed well this season. And Bob Melvin certainly said that, that was a factor in his performance. He said, obviously, it affected what he was doing this year. He was the guy last year who led the team in home runs, and he was about as clutch as you can possibly have. He was fighting it all year, and unfortunately, we're losing him for the rest of the year, which isn't ideal. And Melvin said, it's in his legs. That's what he does and where he generates his power. So personally, I think it's affected him quite a bit. And it's probably more of a question for him. And he's always going to play it off. And at least up until this point, he'll tell you, if I'm out there, I'm healthy and I'm ready to play. But I do think it affected him. And Melvin said, hopefully he's 100% next year. And I think he's got an option with us. Yes, he does. Next year, hopefully he's back. He's someone I really admired from the other side in the past, and he has a ton of leadership qualities here. And still, even though he's not here, he's checking in, telling me, keep it rolling, all the things that you'd expect out of a leader. He's a stud. And I agree 100%. And so this, it's awful. It's tough. He didn't perform well, but if it was injury related, then it makes a lot of sense. Flores has been very consistent in his pro career, and he's not like super old. I think he turns 33. He turned 33 yesterday, the day they announced that he was going to miss the rest of the season. So tough birthday for Wilmer Flores. He does have a $3.5 million player option for next year, which is cheap. And so he very well may opt in. It's just cheap enough that there's a possibility he opts out, but I think he likes it here. He's comfortable here. He's made enough money. I do see him opting in. But if he does choose to opt out, then the Giants have an $8.5 million club option. It's a little bit of a weird setup, but I think the Giants would decline that given the performance and the age in performance in 2024 and age in 2025. But nevertheless, I hope he's back next year because I think he'll be better, and that's a very reasonable salary, and he's a leader on this team like Melvin said. And if he's healthy, I think he'll continue to be the Wilmer Flores we've come to know and love and expect in terms of performance. And it just was an injury-ravaged season with this right knee bothering him, but hopefully he's back on the Giants, in my opinion, hopefully, and healthy in 2025. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On MLB podcast. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day. You can find the link to Locked On MLB in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot, so thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Remember, it'll be after the finale, which is at 9 in the morning. And so, yeah, can't wait to be with you again then. 2 more games. They're big. Giants at least need to win 1, I would say, and hopefully you can win them both and come away with 3 out of 4. So thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.